the main ones. To strengthen the recovery, we clearly think that policy makers need to make progress on 4 complementary fronts. They need to be implemented together. This will generate synergies and make sure that policy actions are self-reinforcing. First, monetary policy. We clearly think that the ECB should continue to do what it's doing. We think that its efforts to deal with the risk of low inflation, in particular to the open-ended nature of QE, is welcome. This will help the ECB meet its medium-term price stability. On the financial sector, steps to accelerate the disposal of non-performing loans would facilitate needed balance sheet repair and strengthen the monetary transmission mechanism. These steps include tougher supervisory treatment of non-performing loans. Clearly, there is an issue with non-performing loans in banks in Europe. Improvements in the insolvency framework and efforts to develop a market for distressed assets. Third, turning to fiscal policy. Clearly, fiscal policy is now largely neutral compared to a few years ago when it was a significant drag on growth, and this is obviously very welcome. But there are important differences at national levels. We believe that countries with large deficits and debt burdens should of course adhere to the Stability and Growth Act to ensure the credibility of the fiscal framework. All countries should adhere to the Stability and Growth Act. We think that's absolutely essential. Those who have flexibility within it should use it. Finally, structural reforms. Structural reforms are obviously essential, and I should say finally and above all structural reform. Right? We all know structural reforms are key to boost medium-term growth, to make the outlook, strengthen the outlook compared to sort of the subdued medium-term outlook that we have. It's essential, but it's not only essential from economic reasons because of the impact on potential growth, also for political reasons. It's important it's important to strengthen the political support inside what is not a political union for supportive demand management policies. It's important that countries that have structural issues deal with them and thereby help strengthening the broad political support inside the union for an appropriate policy mix. So, overall, there's clearly much to be done. There's much to be done on the European architecture, but I also think we need to recognize that Europe has come a very long way in recent years with the establishment of the banking union. It's still not complete, but it's an important step forward. The completion of the comprehensive assessment and the launch of the SSM. Few remarks on Eastern Europe. The near-term outlook in Eastern Europe reflects again both domestic developments and a number of external shocks that are impacting countries differently across the region. We have, I would divide it into 3 groups. We have the Baltics and Central Eastern Europe, where we project a solid growth with improving labor market conditions on the strength of higher domestic investment, helped by lower oil prices. We have Southeastern Europe, where we are expecting to see sluggish growth, reflecting slower than expected reconstruction after last year's flood, less support from fiscal policy, and greater balance sheet challenges than elsewhere in the region. And then finally, of course, we have the CIS region, where we project recession this year, reflecting fallout from the conflict in Ukraine, ongoing macroeconomic adjustment, and of course, in Russia's case, lower oil prices and weakening confidence. Risks to the outlook in Eastern Europe are also as in Western Europe, in our view, now more balanced. Since October, there are some upside risks. Lower oil prices might support demand more than we have thought, and it is possible that the recovery in Europe, particularly the impact of QE, could produce a stronger and more sustained growth. There are also downsides, obviously, coming from the conflict in Ukraine, and of course, surges in financial volatility from normalization of monetary policy, including in the US. A couple of more remarks on Eastern Europe. Despite some progress, the repair of private sector balance sheets remains a challenge in many parts of the region. You will see from our regional economic outlook, which is in the final stage of production, it will come out soon, that this is an issue. This is holding back recovery of private investments, which contracted considerably in the aftermath of the financial crisis. To ensure a more robust recovery, macroeconomic policies need to be mindful of efforts to reduce private sector indebtedness. Fiscal consolidation, while needed in many countries in the region, should be gradual when possible in order not to derail the recovery. Monetary policy should remain accommodating, particularly in countries facing deflationary risks. Let me also say that potential growth in the region is estimated to have halved relative to the experience before the crisis. This reflects undoubtedly that pre-crisis growth marked insufficient progress in structural reform. So to lift potential growth in an environment of much lower capital flows and aging population, it's essential to improve productivity and competitiveness through structural reform. I think you're familiar with the structural reforms we're talking about, labor market flexibility, privatizing inefficient state enterprises, and improving governance. But clearly, there is still quite a reform agenda that needs to be pursued in that part of the world, to regain the convergence and make unlock further catch-up gain in productivity with Western Europe. So let me stop here and take the questions that you might have.
Thank you, Paul. I ask you to please identify yourself and your organization. Let's start here, Alexander, please.
As you didn't mention Greece, I was wondering.
I thought you would also get
there are signals from European sources, European ministers, that no deal is expected in Riga next week. Mr. Schäuble said this again this morning, and then we get very close to some repayments that the Greeks have to do, including to the IMF. I wonder what's your assessment of when the Greeks will run out of money, and what is the way out of this impasse?
If there are any other questions on Greece, let me take them and I will just put them all together.
Yeah. Okay, Ian.
Ian Talley, Wall Street Journal.
And I'll answer them together.
So Ian, go ahead.
Ian Talley, Wall Street Journal. Your forecast one for Greece includes is a 2.5%. That seems rather supremely optimistic. I wonder how that feeds into your European growth. And given the odds that there could be an accidental exit of Greece from the Eurozone, and the IMF routinely does downside scenarios in its outlooks for both the global and the regional economy, what is your downside outlook for the European economy with a Greek exit? And please, yeah.
Thank you.
I just didn't want to get the whole that's speculative business because you guys speculate all the time, and that just is not appropriate.
Okay, thank you, Ian. Here, please.
Just quick diffusion waters. The first payment deadline is May the 1st. Are you worried that Greece won't make that payment? And what would you do if they don't, or is this just a tactic on their part to sort of ring out last minute concessions?
Thank you, Mikhail.
Mark Friedman here from MedFTV. I have a more simple question, Mr. Thompson. First, what is the status of the negotiations? What is the status of the negotiations? Do you expect to give them any money soon? And what do they have to do to receive the money from the IMF?
Okay, in the back, Katerina, I think we're covering very much all by now.
Thank you. Katerina Soko with Greek Daily Customer Remain. Do you think that Greece might need a new program? And what role, if any, could the IMF play in that? And do you envisage, for instance, the merging of the old IMF program with a potential new one? Thank you.
Thank you. Any more? Thanasis?
Thanasis Andana TV. The new government in Greece claims that it wants to reform the pension system without cutting pensions. Is that possible for you? Do you agree? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other? Lenny?
Thank you. This is Lena Greek Public TV. How the liquidity problem can be addressed in the short term in Greece? Thank you.
Yes, Amanda.
Amanda Mas from El País. Somebody in Europe is starting to say that Greece could make a default, but that wouldn't mean to leave the Eurozone. Does the IMF think that could be a possibility?
No? No? Okay, Paul.
Okay. Let me just a few remarks on Sweden and try to answer some of the concrete questions. Clearly, the new government has been elected with a strong public mandate to change the program. No doubt about that, and no doubt that, of course, we fully accept this. As always, we'll be flexible. We recognize that there are always various ways to achieve the program's objectives, and so we are currently engaged in discussions with the new government on how to modify and adjust the program. So, on finding common grounds on how to do that, clearly, this has to be done in a way that preserves the gains, the considerable gains that Greece has made so far, and in a way, looking forward, that is consistent with the program's overarching objectives of ensuring fiscal sustainability, financial sector stability, and, of course, not least, putting the economy on a path of strong and robust growth with strong growth and employment. These discussions are taking time. Clearly, they're taking time. This is not entirely surprising. Any new government, not only in Greece, any new government needs time to translate broad objectives into concrete reform proposals. There are still open issues in several areas, and clearly there is quite a lot of work to be done in order for us to conclude the review of the program and take a proposal to the board to release the next project. Technical discussions have taken place for 3 weeks before Easter. There was a break over Easter, and they have resumed in Athens last few days. And policy discussions in the context of the so-called Brussels group will resume this weekend. So I am, I'm encouraged by the fact that I think the process has improved recently, but there is undoubtedly a need for the negotiations to gain notably further momentum in the coming days and weeks for us to be able to conclude the review in a timely manner. Riga. Nobody ever expected the review to be concluded by Riga. It is no. It's I think it's a question of discussing the progress that has been made in Riga, and in view of this, I think it's important that we in the coming days make significant progress, that the process gain momentum. On the question of, let me be very clear. To conclude the review with the fund, we need a comprehensive package. We cannot conclude the review just based on a few measures. It needs to be a comprehensive package, and that will clearly take several weeks more of discussion to put that in place. Liquidity. I do not have the granular information necessary to tell you. You asking me about payments in the next coming week. We do not have the information, the detailed information about the liquidity situation to have a view on that. What I know is that in June, July, and August there is a significant increase in debt servicing payments over 3 months by a cumulative 10-11 billion, and clearly it's important that one reached agreement on a comprehensive program that could unlock disbursements before then. So I think this. What else on the forecast that we have in the wheel? I think we should have made clear that we have simply not changed it. I mean, that is clearly a forecast that is unrealistic and that will have to be revised downwards somewhat, and we should have made clear that we did not change it. And why did we not come up with another one? Because we are still at such a stage of the negotiations that I cannot tell you exactly what are the policies and therefore what are the growth forecasts. This depends on targets for fiscal consolidation, for instance, that are under discussion. But we are not projecting that Greece is going to be one of the fastest growing countries in the euro area next year. We are not. There was a question on the implications of Greece's exiting the Eurozone. Let me be very clear. We do not expect this to happen. As the Greek government has been made very clear that it wants to stay, and it's going to take whatever action is needed to stay. This is clearly our baseline. I do think that it is speculative to discuss the implications. Clearly the implications for Greece would be very severe. That would take be a high toll on the Greek economy. Clearly, this would also be a major challenge to the Eurozone. It would have a potentially adverse effect on confidence that should certainly not be underestimated. The immediate risk of contagion to the Eurozone will, of course, depend on the policy response by European policymakers. As the Minister Director said the other day, Europe is in a stronger position than it was. The longer term risk would clearly depend on the policy response, on what would be done to preserve the cohesiveness to what would be done towards strengthening the move to political and fiscal union. Let me emphasize: one should not underestimate the risk of this. On the what what did I miss on the role of the IMF new program? And we have a program that runs until March, April of next year. There is still what is about 16 billion or something like that, 16, 17 billion euros left in that program. And at this stage, there is no discussion on what should what should follow after this program. The government has said it wants to continue the relationship with us in the context of this program, and this is what we are focusing on. I don't want to go too much into detail. There is a question on pension reform. We think that pension reforms are critical for Greece. It's critical for Greece to tackle what is an unsustainable situation in the pension system. I repeat, we are not calling for across-the-board cutting pensions. We have not done so, and we continue not to do so. It's somewhat of a straw man to here that's being created by some. The fund has never asked for and will not ask for across-the-board cut in pensions. We cannot, on the other hand, guarantee that it will not mean that some of the higher-end pensions will not have to be reduced, but one would have to discuss these things with, and there are different ways of restoring the viability of the pension system, retirement age, and other things. And nobody expects to solve this problem overnight. It's a question of agreeing on a medium-term plan for gradually tackling this difficult issue. I think I have spoken more than enough on Greece.
Thank you.
Let's turn to other countries.
Yes, let's move to other countries. Here in the first row, please.
Hi, Marta Vanis from Portugal TVI. So on another spectrum, you've been quite critical, I'd say, in the last couple of months about some the government's measures in the sense of some austerity relaxation, and also regarding the predictions for growth starting next year. I'd ask you if anything has changed since then, for better or worse, and also on these remarks, how do you see the recent announcement to cut down austerity significantly starting next year?
To cut
down austerity significantly starting next year, namely with tax relaxation and wages. Thank you.
Okay, so let me start by saying that I think there is no doubt that Portugal implemented its program in a very determined and impressive manner, and it set out to achieve its objectives and above all return Portugal to a situation where it can borrow from markets at low interest rates. That has been achieved, and I don't think there's anybody who will challenge that the program has been successful, and thanks to the government's determined implementation of it. No doubt about that. We think that the reform agenda is certainly by no means finished, and I don't think anybody in the government would say that it's by no means finished. We think there is a need to continue to move ahead with structural reforms, and we have said so, and I think it's wrong to misinterpret that as a criticism of the government. As far as future fiscal consolidation is concerned, I think that it's just Portugal needs to stick to the targets that it sets for itself, and I am confident that it will do so. Too soon to what? I think that they need to stick to the targets. So that it has set for itself. Now, one needs to, of course, have a discussion what's possible within these targets. But I think Portugal needs to stick to the target that is set for itself.
Thank you, Paul. Yes, Jose Luis in the back.
Yeah, hello, Jose Luis de Haro from Economics of Spain. Spain seems to be the poster child of Europe right now in terms of growth. But in the next couple of years, this growth gets stuck in a way. And I would like to know why is that happening, and then if you see any risks from the elections that are coming ahead. And then in terms of budget deficits, some of the regions still systematically don't achieve those objectives. And do you think that the central government should be harder on these regions now that they have the opportunity and the ways of doing it? Thank you.
Let me ask Phil, who is covering Spain, to answer.
Thanks very much. There were a few questions there, and I'll try to respond to all of them in one go. It's clear that confidence in Spain is quite high. Spain has accomplished a lot over the last couple of years, and we shouldn't forget that. The financial system is much stronger. There's been considerable progress in bringing down the fiscal deficit. The economy is growing, and employment is growing. So Spain has accomplished a lot. At the same time, it's clear that there are challenges going forward, the main one being the still very high rate of unemployment. And a frank dialogue of the issues that Spain confronts going forward is something that we should all welcome. We don't see any sign that the rise of new parties like Podemos or Ciudadanos is having any negative effect on confidence in Spain. We do think the new government that emerges, whatever that government might be, needs to commit to continuing on the reform path, needs to commit to continuing to implement the reforms that have already been approved, and indeed to move further down that path to continue to address some of these issues. You asked also about the regional framework. There is a concern that in a federal system like Spain, where there's a central government and also regional governments, and regional governments are responsible for a significant share of expenditure, there's always a concern about making sure that you have a system that ensures that the entire public sector hit its deficit target. And so it will be important going forward to continue to reform that system to ensure greater oversight and greater assurance that the regional governments will hit their targets, a more differentiated treatment of vertical and horizontal distribution of revenues. There are a number of issues there. This is a long-standing issue in Spain. As an aside, I was the fiscal economist on Spain many years ago, and this was an issue of debate. It continues to be one of debate. It's complicated. There are multiple interests that need to be met, and it's in another area where we think it's important to make progress going forward. So to summarize where we are, I think Spain has done a lot. Spain's made considerable progress, but there's still important challenges ahead, and it'll be important for the next government, whichever party it winds up being, to continue down the path of consolidation and structural reform to make sure that the gains that have been made are both consolidated and built upon.
Andrew, in the back.
One that not a brief but genuine Eurozone problem. Is there anywhere where you say we got it wrong or we should change anything from the future after getting through for a long time?
So I read at the beginning of the question.
Yes, do you mind using the microphone right there and identifying yourself? Repeating the question.
So it's like Andrew from the Austrian Daily Standard. I want to ask, is there anything where the IMF is saying regarding the European programs that we got it wrong and we should do something differently? I heard that there's some discussions with the European that the IMF would like to make more broader points and not so much details. Is there anything where we need ourselves a change regarding our European partners? Thanks.
So you're talking about the Troika program more generally. It's we constantly assess and revalue our programs and our advice, and we constantly adjust these programs. It's not something we sort of wake up after 4 years and do. Every review we adjust and review these programs and correct them as we go along. So the programs have always, in all countries, embodied this continuous change as circumstances evolve and as we learn. So I think that is the main point. I think in terms of the Troika, the work with the three institutions, as they're called these days, we, I think it has served us all well. It has been, we all have brought three different perspectives, three different set of expertise, and I think it has improved the overall product. It's certainly not made the process less difficult, but it has been good in terms of the sort of content of the programs. I agree that one of the lessons is that one needs to simplify these programs, and that one needs to have, if you want, fewer moving parts and focus on a few critical areas. I think that is a lesson that not least pertains to Greece. So I would not go. We have already slimmed down the program significantly over time, particularly during the last year, and I would like to refocus it even further on a few critical measures. So I think this is a well taken point. But I'm not going to. Let's not talk about Greece only. There's much more things that we need to talk about.
Thank you, Paul. Let's go to the front here. Irina Zalewska, Macedonian TV. A question on Macedonia. You predicted that Macedonia will have 3.8% economic growth this year. Can you elaborate your assessment on which you base that?
I don't have any specifics on the growth forecast for Macedonia, but I can talk a little bit about what we see as the main issues going forward. Macedonia has made a number of reforms to its business environment, which have helped considerably. What we haven't seen flow from that as much as we might have expected and might have hoped is a flow of FDI, of foreign direct investment into the economy to support further growth and growth of employment. So one of the things that we're hoping to see in Macedonia is continued structural reform, continued measures to promote investment, to encourage domestic saving, and to expand the labor supply, to encourage participation in order to see that growth of employment and growth of domestic investment that Macedonia needs to continue growing.
Andrew, please.
Hi, Andrew Maeda from Bloomberg News. Two questions for you. First of all, on the ECB, what is your assessment of the effectiveness so far of the QE program? Obviously, there's been an exchange rate effect. I think some might say the jury's still out on whether there's been any increase in credit if it's promoting investment in any way. And second of all, I apologize. I do have an additional question on Greece. Can you talk about the debt issue? Does there need to be some type of reconsideration, some type of reprofiling of Greece's debt through discussions with its European partners?
I'll take your first question. The assessment of QE so far, I mean, it is early, it's just started, but all the impact of the effects we see so far are in the right direction. It's not just the exchange rate, very large significant changes in the term premium, long bond rates, and a substantial increase in equity prices, which is what you would expect. It is too early to say, and no one expected, that QE at this point would unlock credit or revive credit growth. But the indications from bank lending surveys are that credit is picking up. Now, of course, on the broader issue, QE enough, even in the narrow question of credit growth, we still think that the Europeans need to do more to resolve fairly high NPL, non-performing loans in quite a few countries. And that would improve the transmission mechanism and the effectiveness of QE in delivering higher credit growth. Finally, I think if you look at the objectives of QE, which is for the ECB to try and meet its mandate of the inflation and price stability objective close to 2%, we have seen a very significant change in inflation expectations from financial markets. Before QE,
there was a sort of trend decline in inflation expectations. QE has definitely managed to stem that decline, and we see some rises at various maturities. Thank you.
Let's see if I don't want to be agreed. I first want to hear if there's other questions on other countries.
Go ahead.
Barry Wood, ITHK in Hong Kong and economic columnist. About Southeastern Europe, why are they stuck? Why are they not growing faster now that there's been a faster recovery in the Euro core? Bulgaria, Romania, Serbia, Kosovo, Albania, etc. What can they do to boost growth?
I think that's a very good question. I think it's. I mean, there are a number of issues. Some of them clearly suffer, in particular, from high indebtedness, and now both including in the private sector, and which is weighing down on growth. I think fundamentally it's a group of countries, not all of them, but many of them were structural reforms for a number of reasons, got stuck. And clearly in the Western Balkan, there was a strong reform momentum after the war in the former Yugoslavia ended. I think that then after a while lost momentum. That was masked though by a period of high capital inflow and before the crisis by the sort of favorable external conditions and in particular large capital inflows, and what we are seeing now after the crisis, where these flows have not returned, it's just in some ways unmasking what is a lack of structural reforms, loss of structural reform momentum that goes quite far back. And the structural reform we're talking about, I know you are familiar with. This is sort of the range of the usual suspects, if you want, including opening up the economy, liberalizing, privatizing, and it's a broader area of thing. But I do think that in some of these countries there has been a loss of reform momentum quite a while back, and that's what we're seeing.
Okay, one last question. Is it on Greece, same subject? Or, okay, go ahead, Ian, and then we will need to wrap up.
I just heard somebody in the hall say that U.S. has had its swagger back for a little while, and now Europe is getting it too. But particularly with the Greece crisis on the edge, and the inflation risks, and the other risks that you enumerated, is it a little too early to say that the Eurozone is out of the woods?